Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Apologies if I sound a little croaky. Got a bit of a sore throat today, but it is what it is. We will soldier on, so to speak. But yeah, obviously this past weekend we had a great light heavyweight title fight between Artur Beterbiev and Anthony Yarde. Obviously that was a very good fight, really entertaining. Both guys really put on a show, but ultimately Artur Beterbiev was too strong, too experienced, and just too good in the end for Anthony Yarde. But I really wanted to discuss the future for both fighters, both Beterbiev and Anthony Yarde. In regards to Beterbiev, for me it's quite simple at this point in time. We need the light heavyweight undisputed fight between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. Now, if you want me to be honest and tell the truth, I have a feeling we'll never see this fight, quite frankly. It doesn't really seem like there's a big push in the boxing world to make this fight happen. Is that due to the political landscape right now? Potentially. I mean, we have heard sanctioning bodies talk about not sanctioning certain fights or certain Russian fighters. This has been discussed openly. So there's that element as to why I don't think this fight will happen. Also though, you look at Dmitry Bivol and Eddie Hearn kind of has his claws in Dmitry Bivol. Of course, Canelo Alvarez still has a rematch clause against Bivol, or at least that is what we are led to believe. And according to Eddie Hearn, Canelo will come back in May, more than likely against a guy like John Ryder. And in September, again, going by what Eddie Hearn says, he wants to make Bivol versus Canelo too. So bear in mind, if Bivol is kind of penciled in to fight Canelo in September, he's not going to fight Beterbiev before then. No way in hell. And given that time frame, by the time Bivol fights Canelo, let's say he wins, Beterbiev at that stage is 39 years old, approaching 40. The time to make this fight is now. Beterbiev more than likely is starting to slow down. If we want to see, both guys in or around their best, and again, I think Beterbiev is starting to slip now, but not to the point to where he's shot or a shadow of himself. But the longer you leave this fight, the more risk there is of that happening. So this should be the priority for both Beterbiev and for Dmitry Bivol, in my opinion. So yeah, this is the fight that should happen next. I don't want to see Bivol being kept warm for a Canelo fight in September. I don't particularly want to see Beterbiev fight Callum Smith next. Not that that's not a good fight. It's a good fight, but we need to see undisputed now. We've waited long enough, and now is the time to make it. Interestingly, Carl Moretti, who works for Top Rank, has declared that he wants to make Beterbiev versus Bivol next. And according to him, they will be reaching out to Bivol's camp to try to do so. Again, I hope something comes of that, but honestly, I'm not holding out much hope. And ultimately, if it isn't Bivol next, then it's going to be Callum Smith for Artur Beterbiev. So his route forwards is quite straightforward, quite frankly. It's either going to be Bivol or Callum Smith. It's just that simple. So there's not really too much to discuss when it comes to Artur Beterbiev. But I think Anthony Yarde, discussing his future is quite interesting. Obviously his stock has risen since the Beterbiev fight. He did a lot better than many were expecting, made it a good fight, made it entertaining. And yeah, he was trying to match Beterbiev in there and going punch for punch, but again, ultimately, it wasn't enough. But regardless, I think there's going to be some intrigue in regards to his future. In regards to Anthony Yarde, I don't want to see no more of this No more of these like nothing fights where he comes back and he fights some unknown Bulgarian plumber who's got a fancy record, but he's beat absolutely nobody. I don't want to see these fights anymore for cheap sanctioning body points. We now need to see Yarde in there with recognisable names, guys who we know would come to win, guys who have ambition, not these complete unknowns from Bulgaria, Romania, etc., Hungary, you know, these Frank Warren WBO specials. He needs to be in competitive fights. If I'm managing Anthony Yarde, obviously a couple of months off, but late summer, I would really try to work with Sky Sports to make a fight with Dan Aziz. Now, Dan Aziz right now is the British and Commonwealth light heavyweight champion, and he's actually fighting in February for the vacant European title. Dan Aziz is coming off some good wins, recently stopped Rocky Fielding, recently stopped Hosea Burton. He's been cleaning up at domestic level, and I think that would be an ideal fight for Anthony Yarde to come back to. Dan Aziz is a grinder, likes to work up close, work at mid-range. He's quite aggressive, maintains a good punch output. He's a solid fighter, not a world level guy, but currently I would say he's in and around European level, and I think he will win his European title fight in February. So I think Dan Aziz would be a really good comeback fight for Anthony Yarde. In fact, if he were to beat Dan Aziz, I think that would be his best win, to be honest. So that is the fight I would target next. I know Dan Aziz fights on Sky Sports and he is under Boxer and Ben Shalom, but if you pay attention in recent months, Boxer and BT, or Sky and BT, have actually had some cross-promotional fights. Of course, Joseph Parker, after he signed to Sky, fought Joe Joyce on BT Box Office. As well as that, on the undercard of Liam Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr., Echo Esserman defended his British title. Echo Esserman, of course, is a Frank Warren fighter. He defended his British title against Chris Congo, a Sky fighter. So these cross-promotional fights have happened between Queensberry and Boxer, or BT and Sky Sports. So that's the fight I would be targeting for Anthony Yarde on his comeback. It would be someone like Dan Aziz. That's the sort of guy, or that's the sort of fight I would be targeting for Anthony Yarde if I was sort of managing his career. And if he were to beat a guy like Dan Aziz, who's a guy who is doing really well at domestic level, if he were to beat Dan Aziz, get his titles, become the European champion, following that we could look at fights like Joshua Buatsi. I think Buatsi versus Yarde would be a tremendous fight, a fight that would excite many here in the UK. Those are the sort of fights that really make the domestic scene out here. Those are the sort of fights that the domestic scene needs, quite frankly. And I wonder whether that fight could be more possible than many of us kind of expect, because when you look at Joshua Buatsi, man, it seems to me like he's second fiddle with Matchroom over on DAZN for whatever reason, and he's been appearing at quite a few BT sports shows, which I find interesting. I mean, I've read somewhere, I'm not sure how true this is, that he only has one fight left on his Matchroom deal. That might be complete BS, but I find it interesting that he's been at a lot of BT shows recently. So again, a fight between Anthony Yarde and Joshua Buatsi, for me that fight would be fireworks. Both guys have entertaining styles. Buatsi's a mid-range guy, likes to apply pressure behind that jab, work the body, hook to the head. He throws punches in combinations, and, you know, that in combination with Yarde's style, who's a better counter-puncher, who can punch in between the punches, I think that would be a tremendous fight. I really do. So for me, Anthony Yarde, his route back is quite simple, in my opinion. And I think there's, you know, you can take Yarde different routes. You know, instead of doing what I said and fighting a Dan Aziz and then maybe targeting Buatsi, why not jump into a fight with Joe Smith Jr., for example. These are the sort of fights I want to see from Yarde going forwards. I no longer, again, I'll reiterate, I no longer want these nothing fights. You know, fights against guys we've never even heard of, who, yeah, may have a snazzy record, but ultimately they are complete crap. I don't think Yarde needs any more of those fights. And if he's to get back to world level, he needs to start fighting the guys in and around him, in my opinion. So yeah, hopefully that happens. I've got my fingers crossed. I really think Yarde needs to capitalise on this newfound popularity and newfound support, you know, because he definitely gained some fans after that defeat. But him going back to fighting those sort of guys who I was mentioning, you know, those nobodies, that's not going to do him any good. He needs to keep fighting now at a certain level, against guys we are familiar with, guys who would get the fans excited, you know? And yeah, there are many good fights out there for Anthony Yarde. Many good fights. Again, if I could click a button, like if I could push a button and make any fight happen, it would be Buatsi. That'd be a great fight. But yeah, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Delboy, where do you think Yarde goes from here? We know where we want Beterbiev to go, but where does Yarde go from here? Share your thoughts below. Peace.